This is a quick review of Scansion for Latin. In Latin, we'll be reading in Dactylic Hexameter, which is the type of meter that the Aeneid is written in. A dactyl is the base of the Dactylic Hexameter, which is why it's called dactylic. Remember, dactyl really means finger in Greek. So if you look at your finger, you can see a dactyl. It's a long and then a short. Hexameter means there's 6 dactyls to a line. So we call those feet. So there's 6 feet in a line. Dactyls can be substituted for spondees. So 2 shorts can equal 1 long. So instead of long, short, you can have a long, long. In Dactylic Hexameter, the last 2 feet are very set in a pattern. The 5th foot is almost always a dactyl. The last foot is either a spondee, long, long, or a trochee, long, short. And the last syllable, because it could be long or short, sometimes we just put an X over it because at that point we're not really interested in whether the last syllable is long or short. So for the very last one, you can put an X on, which means it can be either long or short. Now, there's some set steps to go through to make sure you scan things correctly. The very first thing you should do when you're scanning a line is mark all of the elisions. Then you can mark all of the vowels that are long by position. Then what vowels are long by nature. You fill in the blanks to make sure you get 6 feet to a line, and you're done. So the first step is to mark elisions. This is when there are 2 words that come together with vowels. So if a word ends in a vowel, the next word starts with a vowel, the vowels come together. So in this, which is from the beginning of the Aeneid, notice that ile and et have 2 vowels that come together. You mark an brace or an arc over them, and then the first one gets dropped. And instead of ile et, we have il et. Remember, word final M's, so M's at the end, are not strong enough to separate 2 vowels. So in this same line, a good example of that would be multum illet. The M is not strong enough to separate the U and the I, so those actually elide. So we have mult il et. And the drops away. Word initial H's, so an H at the beginning of a word, also doesn't keep 2 vowels apart. So in this line, the H of hominum is not strong enough to keep the E and the O away, so we have ot hominum. And we would get rid of that E and really that H as well. Vowels are long by position if they are before 2 consonants. So here's the same line we've been looking at. I've taken out the vowels that have elided. So it says mult, il, et. And we can mark things that are long if they're followed by 2 consonants. So that U is long, it's followed by LT. The I is long, 2 L's. That E is long, it's followed by 2 T's. It doesn't have to be in the same word, so that T of et and the T of terrace follow this. The E is long because of 2 R's, the A because of CT, and then the last A because of the LT. So any vowel before 2 consonants is going to be long. The letter X and the letter Z, when you say them out loud, they sound like 2 consonants. So usually things before an X or a Z are also long. So they are considered 2 consonants even though we only write 1. In this line from before, I've taken out the H, at quominum. We have some pretty normal longs because of 2 consonants, but then the very last syllable, rex, we know is long because the X is like having 2 syllables, or 2 consonants. This is where you could get away with applying your mute liquid rule, which we will talk about in just a second, but only in the most dire of circumstances. Step 3 is mark vowels that are long by nature. Certain vowels are always long. It's good to memorize the ones that are in endings. For example, an ablative A is always a long A. And there's many of these. Some words themselves are long, have long vowels in them. So a diphthong is always long. Those are the two vowels that make one sound. These are the most common diphthongs in Latin. I, like puelli, au, audire, a, deinde, and oi, proelium. So if you see any one of these diphthongs, they're always marked long. And by nature, we can also set out the very last two lines, which are almost always dactyl spondee. So step 4 is using all of the long marks that we've got by nature and by position, we fill in the rest. Start from the end because you know what your last 2 feet are going to be. And then you only have 4 feet left, and you need to find a combination of dactyls and spondees that will result in 4 feet and keep the long marks that you've already marked. You can mark additional long marks, but you can't change the long marks that you've already marked long. The first thing to do if you get stuck, if you find that you can't separate the last part into 4 feet that are dactyls and spondees, is to check for elisions. If you've missed an elision, you're going to have one extra syllable, and then you're not going to be able to fit things in. Now, if you get really, really stuck, you've checked your elisions, and you really need to change a long to a short to make everything fit, you can see if the mute liquid rule will allow you to do this. The mute liquid rule is that certain combinations of 2 consonants actually don't equal 2 consonants. So these are when mutes meet liquids. Liquids are all letters that flow l, r, m, n, any sound you can make for a long period of time. And then to remember what your mutes are, just remember pedicab to go, because each one of those consonants is a mute. So if any one of these is followed by L, R, M, or N, instead of counting it as 2 and making the preceding vowel long, you can count them as 1. So here's an example of a beautiful line of the Aeneid. It's line 7 of book 1. So what we can do is we get our elisions, and we can start by marking our long by position. So anything that precedes 2 consonants, mark our diphthongs long. I know that certain things are long, like the I in Albani is nominative plural, so that's long. The E of Patres is also nominative plural, so that's long. And then what we can do is we can start from the end, make a spondee and then a dactyl. And now we're going to try to logic out the rest of this line. So we have to have, as our 4th foot, a spondee, because we've already marked 2 longs. And then the 3rd foot has to be a spondee, because we marked 2 longs. And then the 2nd foot has to be a spondee, because we have a blank and then a long mark. So we have to make a spondee there. And then the 1st foot is this mess. And we didn't miss any elisions, so what we're going to have to do here is employ our mute liquid rule, and we're going to have to look for combinations of P, D, C, B, T, G, and L, R, M, and N. And what we have is this T and an R together in Patres. So this is not going to be 2 consonants at all. We're actually going to use this as 1 consonant. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the same thing, but instead of marking the A of Patres long, we're going to skip it. And we're going to continue to logic out. So now we have a spondee as our 4th foot, a spondee as our 3rd. Now, because we haven't marked the A of Patres long, we can make it a dactyl. And then the 1st foot is a spondee, and it works. So if you follow these simple steps, all of these rules one by one, you'll be able to make your dactylic hexameter come out perfectly.